Hey guys, Lacrosse here, and today I want to talk about Buck and how he's almost an amazing card. So Buck has been in the game for as long as I can remember, and in that time he's never been widely regarded as a really good card. The only use I've seen for him is using his shotgun for DPS on the bunkers, and it's a shame because his ability has a huge amount of potential and creates some really unique gameplay moments. So I want to talk about why Buck in particular doesn't quite fit into the meta on Frag, and also why similar operators to Buck don't quite fit the meta either. So I want to start by talking about what his ability can do. So there's two different uses for his ability. The first one is to barricade off certain sections of the map. Like you see here, I'm barricading off a little bit of my bunker. This will just make it a little bit more awkward for any attackers trying to push the bunker, and should just give you a little bit more time to mobilize your defenders. The other use for his planks are these ramps, which are fairly versatile. You can use them a lot of places over the map, especially the original map, and you can double ramp if you want. You can go up one ramp if you want. Obviously 2 is a little bit easier, and you can combine the two. So here, for example, I'm using my barricades to block off this tunnel, and then I've got the ramps to go up, and that's a really nice setup. So I want to get onto the drawbacks with Buck. Now, as you can see here, I'm going to go for the same setup, and it doesn't take me very long at all to destroy these barricades, and it wouldn't for attackers either. In some ways it might even help the attackers, as it allows them some cover as they run down the tunnel. The next thing I want to draw your attention to is how long it takes to set up something like this. So as you can see here, I spawned in, got a bit lucky. Buck had already set up one of the barricades, and for me to complete the setup it still took me about 20 seconds. Those are 20 seconds which should have probably been spent doing something else, stopping a rush or rushing myself, and you just don't have that kind of time when it comes to an actual game. But let's say for whatever reason I did prioritize this, there's still every chance that I flick over to someone else to do something more useful, and now my AI goes and puts down a plank somewhere else and my setup is kind of ruined. And the card that springs to mind most here is Cybercop. Now, you used to see quite a few players using Cybercop to stop some rushes, and it was incredibly effective. But then the AI would go and put it in a different place, and all of a sudden it was completely pointless. Another one that springs to mind would be Mechanite. How many times do you see the AI deploy the shield and then just walk straight in front of it, rendering it completely useless? Now, my understanding of this is that the AI basically doesn't have a good understanding over what its special is or what it does, or how to play around it. And there's a few other cards I would throw into this category as well. Fidelio, Mimi, OK, Scrapper, Slimer, Scout and Nutty. All of these guys you would really have to micromanage to get the most out of them. There's so much going on at any given moment, but you don't have time to flick over to Buck and put down some barricades, maybe a ramp or two. And like I said, even if you do have, for whatever reason, the time to go and micromanage these guys, there's every chance that the AI will go and use their gadget elsewhere and ruin your setup, 10 seconds down the line. So it just makes these cards really weak all round. So what could Oh Bibi do to make these cards more effective? Well, let me throw a few ideas at you here. So my first idea is that you would be able to toggle on and off on a switch whether you want to be AI to be able to use that character's ability. Now, in the vast majority of cases, you obviously do. It's a big advantage for them to do that. But with these specific cards, it's not an advantage. In fact, it actually makes the cards actively worse, and that's a real shame. So that would be a small solution. I'm not sure that would necessarily do the job on its own. So what if you made it so that the AI with those characters played a very specific way every single time, regardless of what your opponent was doing? So what if Mechanite went and stood at the end of the tunnel and put his shield up and just played behind it, regardless of what else was going on? Would it be a disadvantage or not? What if Cybercop went and put his jail down in the entrance to one of your bunkers every single time, regardless of what was going on? One of the things I've noticed with these cards is I think all of them would be best as defender cards. Now, let's say, hypothetically, you made all of these defender cards, and when you press defend on one of the bunkers, let's say your Mechanite went and put his shield up in front of that bunker, kind of looking down the tunnel. Cybercop went and put his jail up either on the tunnel or the entrance to the bunker. Let's say Buck went and barricaded that side or that bunker or whatever it might be. I personally think that would be way more effective than what they currently do. But let's go back to Buck specifically. Okay, so with Buck specifically, how could you make him better without these changes that I just mentioned? Well, I think the first thing would be to make his barricades a bit more effective, make them harder to take down. You could also make his frag power maybe like metal barricades where they're like almost impossible to take down. It might take like 10-20 hits or something like that. Make it so it's a real obstacle. Let me know in the comment section whether you think that would be a good change or not, or whether you think that would be overpowered. Alternatively, you could increase the amount of planks that Buck could put down at any given time. So let's say you moved it from 4 to 8, and you could then sort of do both the setups which I had earlier. So let's say you did the one on the tunnel where you have the 2 barricades and then the 2 ramps, and at the same time you had the barricades around the bunker. You know, if you did that all at the same time, it would actually make one of the bunkers really hard to push. Whereas at the moment, I don't think, you come up against a Buck and you don't think, oh no, this is going to be really difficult to attack this bunker. A lot of the time they just put it up randomly. I wanted to make this video to kind of highlight how some of these cards have the coolest abilities in the game. They should be really, really fun to play with, but unfortunately they're just pretty much unusable. I think Buck is the closest to being usable out of this whole group, and I think the only reason anyone would use Buck would be for his shotgun DPS. I don't see anyone using him for his ability. Saying that, I do think if they buffed his shotgun to, let's say, like Katrina's level, that would be really cool, and I think it would be an incentive to run him in the game, but I would much rather see his ability be buffed as well. I think there's so much potential for Buck, and that's why I wanted to make this video, just to kind of highlight that and some of the problems revolving around these characters who you have to micromanage to be successful with. I think it's fair to say Oh Bibi's vision for Frag is for every card to be runnable, at least in different stages of the game, different arenas. And I think these are the characters that miss out on that a little bit, and with just a few tweaks here and there, I think they could definitely have their own spots in the game.